Hi everybody, welcome to The Garage, the Court of Public Opinion. I'm Jeremy Cordeaux and Peter Clayton is behind the camera. And while I know that fly, that pesky fly, is in the garage, as Snuzzles Durante said, everybody wants to get in on the act. If we move it along, maybe we'll get through before he pops up, Pete.
Yeah, maybe.
You never know, but I know he's here. Where will we start? I touched on this on Friday when we were live streaming, jeremycordeaux.com, the 3-hour program from the dining room table. But it goes on, it's a continuing saga. 20,000 Australian lives. A lot of people, 20,000 Australian lives. 25 million worldwide. Massive financial and economic ramifications. I'm talking about the COVID pandemic. And now we're not going to have the Royal Commission that Anthony Albanese promised before the election. Well, he says, I didn't promise it. I said, we'll have a Royal Commission or an inquiry. And of course, the media, being the media, nobody stood up and said, sir, would you mind committing to one or the other? No. Free pass. Through to the keeper. True to form. Anyway, this inquiry will be run by 3 medicos and I think a senior public servant, retired public servant. They're going to look at what went wrong, what could have been done differently, what could have been done better, what are the lessons. All good things to investigate because there is another pandemic waiting around the corner, probably. But wait. If we're going to have an inquiry, wouldn't we include the most impactful decisions that were made on our behalf? The directions we were given, which of course were made by the states and territories. Lockdowns, school closures, compulsory vaccination, hefty fines, border closures, suspension of civil and human rights. These were the grassroots decisions that affected us and the outcome most. The impact of all these state decisions were ongoing and horrendous. Totally wrong not to look at all these aspects. Totally wrong. Here's the fly. There's the fly. Okay, you want to get in on the act. There you are. Go away. You've had your 15 seconds of fame.
Once more.
Go away, once more. Anyway, totally wrong, as I say, not to include these aspects. Tony Albanese clearly runs the risk of appearing to run a protection racket for the predominantly Labour-led states and territories at the time and in the present moment. I can't see it any other way. Labour, by the way, speaking of politics, Labour is trying to look open-minded when discussing nuclear power, trying to bring it back to a purely financial issue. They're talking about $380 billion to set up a nuclear power generation system, which is totally wrong on the number of small, compact nuclear generators, totally wrong on the number, totally wrong on the money. Totally wrong. Nuclear power, the only clean, safe and efficient way to generate power, proven generally in most parts of the world. Labour will never endorse nuclear power. I was very surprised when they accepted the submarines. Their hatred of nuclear is in their DNA, deep in their DNA. But the argument in favour of nuclear power is compelling. If you have an open and intelligent mind, clean, available and cheap. Labour spins a completely different story, and of course they would. But like the Voice, it is not in the interests of Australia. I'm sorry to hear, I know I've said I'd never kill anything.
But you have a limit.
But I'm tempted. Go away. I'm sorry to hear that Roger Whittaker died. Pete, you know some of his music?
Well, the Mexican Whistler is one of
The
them.
Mexican Whistler. He did a lovely, he could whistle. Beautifully. There was a thing that he did with a whistling version of the Elizabeth Serenade, which is a beautiful, hauntingly beautiful piece of music. So many songs. Great and gifted singer. We are sorry to lose you, sir. 83, I suppose people could say a good age. But coming up in a couple of weeks, I don't think it's this week, I think it's the week after, we have the most marvellous gentleman. He is 100 years old, almost to the day when he comes on the live streaming jeremycordeaux.com 3-hour show. He's going to represent Australia playing tennis, believe it or not. 100 years old. So I suppose 83 is pretty young when you consider Roger Whittaker died at 83, and anyway, I'll tell you more about that later. The Anthony Albanese government promised when it came to power that it would depoliticise government boards and inquiries. Transparency, really, is what he was talking about. Didn't like what was happening with the previous government. Great. Terrific. As opposition back then, all he had to do really was to point out what was going on with the government, as I hope the current opposition will point out what is going on with the current government. Gets very complicated. The findings of a committee. This is what the government, the Albanese government, put into effect when it came to power. A committee looking into this whole business of committees and boards and things like that, and how political appointments were being made, quite blatantly. This report was completed 2 months ago and handed to Katie Gallagher. Perhaps, Katie, we could be allowed to see it? If it's not too damning? This was not looking at the previous government, this was looking at the Albanese government. And along the same lines, when Labor came to power, they were critical of the former government for not making public a complete list, along with costs, for those people who used the VIP flights, many and varied. You know, I was telling you about the other day about Defence Minister Miles and his $3.5 million bill, mostly getting him from Melbourne to Geelong, even though he had a chauffeur-driven car to take him. Seems the government has gone back on that one too. Now, on this subject, I wonder where is the opposition? They should be all over this sort of backflipping, all over it. Unless, of course, they approve and would do the same thing themselves, which is always a possibility. And speaking of inquiries, this Senate inquiry into bank closures, it's been going for quite a while. I mentioned that again on Friday. 650 bank closures in the last couple of years. 650. Last week the bank's CEOs were hauled up in front of the Senate and they threw it back on the customers. So we're to blame. Use it or lose it, they said. Use it or lose it. Well, that's fair enough. Let's remember that. and vote with our feet. Use the bank branch. I know I will. Absolutely. Anyway, the inquiry is still going on, and I guess it will for a while. Combank, by the way, will be charging businesses. They used to charge $3 to deposit cash. $3 to put your money in your bank account. Anyway, that's what they were doing. But now it's $40. Yep. They're going to be charging $40 instead of $3 for you to deposit cash in your account. This is apparently to cover the cost of extra security for online banking. Here's an idea. Why not charge the online customers for the extra security for online banking? I think that would be just. What is it about cash that banks don't like anymore? Gee, I always heard bankers like gold, like outlaws, like bankers like cash, like anyway, it doesn't matter. I think there was a Johnny Cash song about that. Bankers like gold, like anyway, it doesn't matter. I'll think of it at 2 o'clock in the morning. I always do. But there ain't nothing wrong with cash. I always heard that cash was king. Be that as it may. Before we get into the dates, because I want to show you a little piece. What have we got? We've got that Alex Antic bit.
Yes, about the smoking ceremonies.
Yes, the smoking ceremonies, because I have this funny feeling deep down that we've had enough. We really have been pushed to the point where it is annoying people. You know, the idea of saying, welcome to country, and the acknowledgements, and all the nonsense the ABC goes on with renaming our cities and our towns, and from where they are broadcasting, and all that sort of stuff. We've had enough. Anyway, Alex Antic has a few interesting things to say. I think you might agree, you might disagree. If you disagree or you agree, please call me Friday. And you can do that live in the 3-hour live streaming program. But just before I get onto the dates and throw to Alex, father, mother and sister who have yet to be sentenced, I point out here. They've yet to be sentenced, but have pleaded guilty. Father, mother and sister stabbed a young lady in a shopping centre in clear view of passers-by. She was a daughter. She was a sister. Allegedly, this was because she was seeing a young man who was not a Muslim. All the hallmarks of an attempted honour killing. All the defendants have pleaded guilty, but guilty to a lesser charge. Now we'll see what the sentence turns out to be. It'll be interesting. This is not an isolated incident. This is happening all over the world, surprisingly in Australia, more often than we would like to admit. There has to be a way the immigration authorities can control people from coming, particularly from the Middle East, with very different contrasting views as to the rights of women. Now, I would go so far as to say when people wish to come to Australia, they have to be told women are not chattels. You can't marry them off. Sometimes as young as 9 years old. You can't do that in Australia. They do not have to wear the niqab or the hijab or the burqa when they come to Australia, which in my opinion is something that you may disagree totally, and I don't mind. I mean, we all are entitled to an opinion, but my belief is it depersonalises and desexualizes an individual. I understand the choice for some people from conservative religious backgrounds would be very different. The free and libertarian society we have here in Australia is not for everybody. I'll be the first to admit it. But it's simple. Do not come to Australia if you are not going to embrace the Australian way of life. Presumably, you're trying to get away from, perhaps, I'm jumping the gun here, I'm surmising. I'm thinking you're trying to get away from oppression and suppression and violence. But you come to Australia, please embrace our way of life. It's equality for men and women and freedom for men and women. Freedom for all. And if that doesn't appeal to you, I'm sure we would not take offence at that. If it doesn't appeal, don't come. Because it won't end happily. A sad story. Absolutely sad story. Honour killings. You know, two things really annoy me. One of them is this honour killing business and the marrying off of children, which in some religions is okay. Doesn't seem to me to be something God would embrace. And the other thing is female genital mutilation. 200 million little girls violated like that every year. And the world and the United Nations and the World Health Organization and everybody, the churches, Islam, the muftis, turn a blind eye. It's cultural. Not in my book, ladies and gentlemen, not in my book. September 26, before we throw to Alex Antic, 1983, Australia 2 wins the America's Cup yacht race. First non-US winner, and as Bob Hawke said, anyone who gets the sack for not coming to work today is a bum. Ah dear. 1948, Olivia Newton-John, British-born, a Grammy Award-winning pop singer, hopelessly devoted to you. Physical, actress, Greece, Xanadu. Born in Cambridge, England. She died, sadly, in 2022, but born 1948. Emily Berliner patents the gramophone in 1887. I thought Edison would have done that. Apparently not. Ian Chappell, 1943, Australian cricket batsman and captain, 75 tests and broadcaster, Channel 9, born in Adelaide, South Australia, 1943. 1946, the first edition of The Adventures of Tintin, published in 1946. Francis Drake completes his circumnavigation of the world, sailing into Plymouth aboard the Golden Hind in 1580, on this very day. 2008, Paul Newman, American actor, HUD, hombre, hustler, auto racer, team owner, charity food company founder. He dies of lung cancer at 83. 2008. Mary Russell, Duchess of Bedford, English aviator and ornithologist, born in 1865. Groundbreaking ceremony for the Hollywood sign in Hollywood, Los Angeles. The old Hollywood land sign, which was there before, was torn down, and they reconstructed on this day in 1949 the replacement, which just says Hollywood. I think it was originally Hollywood Land. I think it was a land development sign in the beginning, wasn't it, Pete? Yeah. 1849, Ivan Pavlov, Russian psychologist and pioneer of psychotherapy, Nobel Prize winner. 1904, born Russia. Pavlov's dogs and all that. Yeah. British ocean liner RMS Queen Mary is launched, wins the blue riband for the fastest passenger crossing of the Atlantic. 1936, 1938, 1952, retired in 1967, and permanently located on Long Beach, or set up at Long Beach in California as a hotel. 1834, she started breaking records though. Brian Ferry, the British songwriter, Roxy Music, Love is a Drug. 1945, we were born the same time. So, same year anyway. Levi Strauss, the German-born American clothing designer who founded the first company to manufacture blue jeans, went there originally to mine gold and then realised that there was more than one way to skin a cat. They needed something, clothes, so he made them. Born Washington County, Durham, England. No, I'm sorry. No. What am I saying? I jumped something here. Levi Strauss. He dies at 73 in, it's this bloody fly. 1902 he died. And one more, 1962, TV comedy series Beverly Hillbillies. Premieres on CBS on this day. That was in 1962. Yep, very successful show. America and Australia. 1964, the TV sitcom Gilligan's Island with Bob Denver as Gilligan. That debuts same day, CBS. Now, 1968, the first broadcast of Hawaii Five-0 on this very day on CBS TV. It's back in a modern form these days. On this very day, same day, 1969, the TV sitcom The Brady Bunch, created by Sherwood Schwartz, premieres on ABC TV in America. Lots of interesting things happened on this day, and if it's your birthday or wedding anniversary, I hope it'll be a very happy day. Do we have some more, team?
I'll bring some.
We can't put... This thing's been here for 2 weeks, I swear. You think it's a reincarnated somebody from 5AA? Oh, God help me. Anyway, let me throw to Alex Antic and this crazy business that we're surrounded with all the time. This business of welcome to country and acknowledgements and things. And I have this funny feeling they have just simply pushed the envelope a bit too far. Ladies and gentlemen, Pete and I will see you tomorrow. I'm Jeremy Cordeaux. Believe in yourself. Thank you for viewing the Court of Public Opinion.
Welcome to country ceremonies are now as ubiquitous as they are inescapable. Australians are forced to sit through these rituals everywhere from the commencement of Parliament to school assemblies. They're now more common than singing our national anthem. And far from being an ancient practice, these rituals began to be used by progressive activists in the early 2000s. The practice suggests that Australians whose families have lived here for generations, possibly since settlement, are not welcome. The welcome to country is nothing more than something wealthy city people love to do to make themselves feel good. All Australians have the right to call this country home, but the activist and bureaucratic classes want division as it perpetuates the victimhood mindset which they use to manipulate people. And by the way, when's reconciliation actually going to be achieved? What does it look like practically? Will it be achieved when we've got a treaty? When it will be achieved when Australians are paying some sort of rent tax? Or perhaps when there's a new Indigenous nation that will further divide Australians? The answer is that activists will never be happy, and we all know it, because bitterness and resentment are their bread and butter. So next time you're asked to participate in one of these ceremonies, remember, despite what they say, refusing doesn't make you a racist. So here's my memo to the grievance industry. Thanks for the virtue theatre, but like most Australians, I'm sick and tired of being welcomed to my own country.